Bitcoin just hit a new all-time high of 126K. What is causing it? There's an article on CoinDesk that's going to go into it. I think it's a lot of reasons. You're watching the Bitcoin Vigilante. My name is Graham Elwood. Please support what we're doing right there. That's an on-chain donation. There's ways to dump your fiat if you want to do that. So if you're new to the channel, I like talking a lot about Bitcoin. If you've been here a while, one of the places I find to get it's a good resource to just get information on what's going on is CoinDesk. They're not a sponsor or anything like that. They just report in the crypto space. And here's why they're saying multiple. I have my own reasons for the surge. I think it's not a coincidence that the price was like kind of going down. It was 105, 110, 112. And then the shutdown happened and people went, uh-oh, the dollar's not doing well. So people are pulling their money out of the dollar. They don't trust the United States and they're putting it into BTC. But here's a little more academic reason. This is at CoinDesk. Bitcoin rally fueled by perfect macro storm, Ether, Doge, and BTN. They're all surging. Bitcoin breakout suggests further upside above 130,000, but a pullback to 118 could be possible. This is why I COO said. Bitcoin hit another new all-time high of 126,223 on Monday, while Ethereum got a 3-week high. I don't own any more altcoins. I'll just say that right now. I used to have Ethereum, and a year ago, I was finally like, I got back from El Salvador. I'm like, I'm a Bitcoin maxi, and I converted it into Bitcoin, and the Bitcoin price has doubled, and Ethereum has gone up like 10%. Just saying. Strong ETF inflows, supply squeeze, and safe haven demand. So what are those things? We'll get into the details of what those are. ETFs, now we've talked about this. That's basically, it's a Bitcoin product that's offered by a lot of traditional trading places, TD Ameritrade, all those places where you can just buy stocks and an ETF. And I think I'm not a huge, I wouldn't buy it personally because it's like buying a certificate. Do you want to buy a certificate for gold coins, or do you just want to own gold coins? I would rather just own Bitcoin, put it in a cold wallet than have an ETF. But, some traditional investors, they just don't feel, you tell them about cold storage and move it to a wallet, and they're just like, I don't know what the hell that is. But then their stockbroker, their fund manager goes, well, we've got these Bitcoin ETFs. So, it does help the price when traditional investors are buying a Bitcoin product. Like it still means more Bitcoin is being bought, which ups the price. And then we've got supply shock. So there's rumors that, and I think this has to do with, and I've talked about this before, that if America's economy goes down hard, belly up, Bitcoin will go down in the short run and it'll come right back up because people they'll be selling off other assets, stocks, bonds, commodities, real estate, whatever is nosediving, and they'll put it into something that is safe, which will be Bitcoin, and it'll be gold. And we have a pretty good use case of that in April when the tariff thing that's not working. When Trump announced the tariffs, all the markets crashed and Bitcoin went down with it. It went down as low as, it was trading at about 115 or something like that. And it went down to 80K. It was hovering between 80 and 85K. And then two things started pulling out. It was gold and Bitcoin started coming out. And then a Bitcoin hit a new all-time high of 124K like a month or two later. Now we're at 126K. So if there is some big sort of market crash kind of thing, I've talked about this, people are not buying US bonds anymore. They're going to put their money in Bitcoin. We're already seeing it last week with the government shutdown. People don't have faith in the American government. They don't have faith in investing in America. They don't have faith in buying American bonds, which if no one buys our bonds, that's problematic. But then the Bitcoin price went up. I've been talking about this for years. This is why I've been encouraging guys to buy it, because there's only ever going to be 21 million. And this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but this is why, because, and I'm going to get into it in a second. So this is the article from CoinDesk, but let me show you some other things, some other indicators, right? I don't want to get into all the crypto stuff. And they're telling us October, Bitcoin went to 125 over the weekend and then came back down. But let me show you This, okay, this is another thing that is huge. This is why we're getting into adoption. So what this is saying, I'll make it larger. Okay, $7 billion real estate company, OpenDoor, just said they will start accepting Bitcoin for homes. This is huge. Why is this big? Because if you can buy and sell a home using Bitcoin, you might be like, well, Graham, I'm not a big Bitcoiner. I just started watching your channel, or I've been watching your channel back when it was Political Vigilante, and I still, which I appreciate you staying with us. Here's why this is significant. And again, I lost my home in 2010. One of the reasons I started my Political Vigilante show was to talk about that. And one of the reasons I got into Bitcoin is I was like, oh, wow. So if a real estate company, so if the dollar is not doing well, if the economy is not doing well, people being able, and if Bitcoin is doing well, so think about, we just hit a new all-time high of 126. Whenever you hit an all-time high in anything, in any Bitcoin, gold, whatever, stocks, that means every single owner of that asset is in a profit. And one of the things why we had a little bit of a sell-off, and the price kind of was down, 108, 109, 110, it was doing that in the last month, coming off an all-time highs. You get people who've owned this for a long time are like, well, I want to realize some gains. I bought Bitcoin back, 2010, 2013, and I've made huge gains, and I just want to cash some out. Well, one of the things people might do, especially if the real estate price goes down and the Bitcoin price is going up, Bitcoin holders are going to go, well, I want to own a home. Is real estate has always been a really solid investment. And even if real estate takes a big hit, eventually people are always going to need places to live. They're always going to need places to live. Everyone's going to need a roof over their head. So you might see a lot of people who are longtime Bitcoin holders go, oh, wow, Bitcoin's now trading at 250, 300, 1,000, 400 a coin, which some people are, and I'm going to get to some predictions in a second about how it could hit 500, 600K in the next 3-4 months. Then let's say you're someone who has, you bought Bitcoin years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and, you've got 50, 100, 500 Bitcoins, and you're like, oh, I can buy a house now for 2. What used to cost me 20 Bitcoin to buy a house is now going to only cost me 2 or 1. You're going to see that happening. And again, why this is big right now, before this company, to buy a home in Bitcoin, you either had to go to El Salvador, where you can do that transaction, find a seller that's willing to do that transaction. And there are some people that do that. There are some realtors that do that. There are some escrow companies where you could do that. Or you have to sell your Bitcoin, pay the 15% capital gains tax, and then use that cash to buy the house. But this, and I don't know the particulars of it, but why this could be big. Let's say the seller isn't a Bitcoin person, but the buyer is. The buyer could then just do it through this company, use their Bitcoin, and then I got to figure out what the particulars are, but it's big. And there's as Bitcoin adoption gets more and more people are going to go, oh, I understand what Bitcoin is. I'll sell my house in Bitcoin and get paid in that because I know Bitcoin will appreciate faster than real estate. I mean, this is huge. There's a couple other things I want to point out too, why the price is going up and why we could see a huge upswing. So there's a couple other things I just put in. This is what Michael Saylor, and we follow Michael Saylor a lot. Oh, there's Trump saying. All right, let's go into this right here. Michael Saylor, if you haven't, he owns MicroStrategies. He's a software developer. He started to come up with apps back in like 2010 or whatever for the iPhone, because he saw how the iPhone the smartphone in general was going to change everything. So here's how he just said, MicroStrategy, which now owns a huge portion of, he was the guy 5 years ago that was the billionaire tech guy that realized how valuable Bitcoin was. Went, oh wow. He's also the guy that said when every billionaire starts buying $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, the price will go nuts.
For our company, if we were to ever get to 5% of the network's going to be at least $1 million a coin. If we were to go beyond it, it's going to 10 million a coin. So when we get to 7% of the network, if we do, and Bitcoin is $10 million a coin, and if BlackRock keeps up with us, that means 85% of the network, right? And you're going to be talking about $200 trillion. So you're going to have $170 trillion that will flow to the individuals. So they're not exactly getting crowded out, right? If anything, what you've got is the corporations are all engines turning the flywheel of the Bitcoin economy. Every single company, every Bitcoin treasury company that capitalizes on Bitcoin is like attaching a motor to the network. And every time that company buys $50 million worth of Bitcoin, they spin that drive shaft one turn. That's 1 day's natural supply. Right. And so the more companies that come on, whether it's BlackRock or whether it's Strategy or whether it's MetaPlanet or whether it's 21 or whether it's BSTR, or whether it's similar, whoever it might be, each one of them is firing up a motor. All of the motors are powering up the network. If you're an individual and you believe in Bitcoin, you buy the Bitcoin, you cold storage the Bitcoin, and you let all the companies power up the network.
Okay, so what is he saying when he's talking about all that $1 trillion? He's saying, first of all, a lot of people are like, well, the big companies, they're gonna push out just the little guy, small person. What he's saying is, if you own Bitcoin, no, because even if you own, like, let's say Bitcoin, as he predicts, goes to 10 million a coin, right? And you own 5% of a Bitcoin at 10 million a coin. That's $500,000. That's why it's like, I keep saying, just get a little something, own a little something, because you're talking about hundreds of trillions of dollars that are going to flow into Bitcoin. His company, BlackRock, these other companies. And they're going to motor the individual. And he said, when all this happens, $170 trillion is going to flow to individuals. All the individual people who just own a little bit of Bitcoin, when the price goes to $1 million a coin, 10 million a coin, all along the way, it's all of this wealth is going to be created for regular individuals. The big companies are going to get it because they're waking up to this. But this is why I keep saying, get in now. And again, every Bitcoin can be cut up into 100 million pieces. You can buy as little as $10. This is happening. That's why I got so into this, is when I started watching institutional money. Listening to some gamer hacker guy go, Bitcoin's the future. Okay, maybe not. But when institutional money, and again, I got screwed by Wall Street, screwed by the central banks, screwed by the corrupt two-party system, because I thought the game was fair. And I thought, you got to understand how they think. You got to understand how they think. And it's the biggest shortfall of lefties and creatives, and I'm a lefty creative, is not understanding money. I didn't understand it, and I had to get more educated about money. And seeing the GameStop thing of 2021 was one of the most revolutionary acts of resistance I've ever seen. And nobody got arrested. Nobody got shot with tear gas. Nobody got beat up by a cop. Nothing. They played the corrupt Wall Street game the way they did. And when I started to understand that and understand capital and understand investments, I'm like, how can I, as a regular person that wasn't born into wealth, I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars at my disposal. I don't even have $1 million at my disposal. What can I do? And this is the opportunity. I've been saying this from the jump. It's the single greatest opportunity for regular people to increase their wealth. Because when hundreds of trillions of dollars, again, he's not a crackpot. He's a guy that keeps doing this. And MicroStrategy keeps buying Bitcoin. Their stock price goes up and they borrow against their stock to buy more Bitcoin. I mean, he's a master at it. He's a master at it. And all these companies, you know, Vanguard, the Vanguard CEO was like, gee, I don't know if Bitcoin is really the play. It might not work in the long run. Well, Vanguard is the single largest holder of stock of MicroStrategies. So they believe if you buy MicroStrategy stock, you're believing in Bitcoin to a certain extent. Follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth. Empower yourself. I want to see regular people empowered. I want to see regular people not caught up in this thing, you know? So follow the money, connect the dots, get the truth. Stack Sats. Thank you for watching. Support our show with Bitcoin. You can there's bonus content over at Patreon. There's Rockfin. There's a lot of cool ways to support what we're doing. And shave your knuckles for justice. Boom.